So before we get started, I want to introduce my esteemed panel here. Brian from Munich Re Specialty Group, Jennifer from Boston Mutual Life, both customers, one on the P&C side, one on the LNA&H side. And what they're going to do is they're going to give a little bit of background about themselves and their companies. But what I want you to understand here before we get started is they're going to be talking about their business transformation, but they're going to come at it from two different perspectives. Jennifer comes from a company that's 130 years old, very steeped in history, very steeped in a lot of culture, and they're engaging on their transformation journey. Brian, as part of Munich Re Specialty, which is obviously part of Munich Re, but is really a startup greenfield as a part of Munich Re. And they went through a business transformation. Both of them have started this also during COVID. And they have some very interesting perspectives about that and how they really address that on a going forward basis. So Brian, why don't you first introduce yourself and your company?
Absolutely. Thank you, Denise, and good morning, everyone. Brian Seanor, Vice President of Digital Product Management at Munich Re Specialty North America. Obviously, I'm sure most of you know Munich Re is a conglomerate, but we have a number of independent business units, of which we are one. And basically within that business unit of MRSG&A, I am responsible for pretty much all things Majesco. So I own the suite end-to-end, everything from the implementation to managing backlog, production support, all of that stuff rolls up to me.
Jennifer?
Thanks, Denise. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer King. I'm from Boston Mutual. Like Denise mentioned, we're a 132-year-old life insurance company based out of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm the vice president of, I have a very long job description, customer experience service, daily operations, reconciliations, reporting, quality, and the enterprise PMO. That's all to say we're not a big company. We're a small to medium-sized insurer, so we wear a lot of different hats. And at Boston Mutual, I am responsible primarily for leading those functions, but in addition, leading the transformation to implementing a new policy admin system at Boston Mutual. Prior to joining Boston Mutual, I'm a relative newcomer in the insurance space. I've only worked there for 3 years. Prior to that, I have about a 20-year background in program and project management in the financial services.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So everybody talks about business transformation, but few actually make it happen. And Jennifer has a really interesting perspective on this. What were the burning reasons for starting that transformation or your greenfield? So Jennifer, do you want to start first?
Sure. So like I said, 132-year-old insurance company, really steeped in legacy knowledge, legacy technology, legacy process. But we have really big dreams. We're looking to increase our market share, we're looking to grow sales, and all of the while still providing a real human, empathetic, and kind approach with our customers. So what we knew was in order to meet those goals, we simply couldn't get there from where we are today. We're operating on legacy platforms that were built in the 70s. Think green screens, F2 buttons. It's completely outdated, it's totally fractured, and it's just really too hard. And it limits our ability to serve our customers, not only in the way that our customers want to be served, but in the way our employees truly want to be able to also serve our customers. The time to market on new hires is just generally way too long. I'm training up customer experience reps, and it's taking me 4, 5, 6, 7 months to get them up to speed because they're learning 8, 9, 10, 11 different legacy systems that we need to get them functional on before we can deploy them to the customer. And there's just no path to scale with that current technology and process that we're operating on. So really, and just I want to add to the hiring challenges. I don't know how many out there are actively trying to find people that might want to work on a mainframe from 1970. I will say that population of people with that skill set is dwindling. And in addition, it's really difficult to attract new talent to come in and work in that kind of environment. So that was really our burning platform. Denise, we have a goal now to be frictionless and effortless with our customers and really work with them in the ways that they want to work with us. And we just can't do that given our current state.
To that hyper-personalization, how they want to interact with you.
That's right. That's right.
Brian?
Sure. So in our case, we were actually building effectively an MGA from the ground up. So, Munich Re, obviously has numerous outlets in North America which are really exist to kind of take advantage of some of the opportunities that exist over in Europe that we aren't necessarily leveraging here. And there was an acquisition of Roanoke Insurance Group about 15, 20 years ago, and Roanoke was classically a pure brokerage, played a lot in the commercial inland marine space and commercial ocean cargo space, and they were, effectively going to Munich Re syndicates on a one-off basis for each risk. We were tasked, or our COO was tasked with effectively formalizing that into an authorized Lloyd's cover holder. So really like kind of changing so that we actually had binding authority as an MGA and would work with that in-house brokerage. So in order to do that, you kind of have to, we were, as a brokerage, we were doing, just your typical Excel rater, creating policies out of Word documents, et cetera, et cetera. Well, in order for us to get that authority, to get that, to be that authorized cover holder, we had to demonstrate that we actually had a true platform and underwriting controls and processes that didn't exist. So really, we were, that was why we partnered with Majesco, and we really kind of brought them along that journey to build this as a greenfield outfit.
So, it's we always talk about technology, and obviously from Majesco, we love our technology. But to really make it effective, you really have to understand what your business operating model is going to be. And I think both of you took a very different approach, or sometimes similar approach. At first, really defining that operating model. How did you want to do business? What were the products you're going to do? What was the kind of experiences that you wanted for your agents or brokers? And so, how did you approach that process? And I think both of you did something very unique that not everybody does. Internal views are important, but the external view from your customer or your agent or broker is even more important. So Brian, why don't you first start from that perspective?
Sure. So, we actually had kind of a leg up on that because, again, we were transforming from a pure brokerage. So, we had a lot of, former brokers that became production underwriters in this model. So, they had quite a bit of strong opinions on how to, on how to, capture information and structure things, and structure our products alongside those, the operating model that we had historically had. Now, we do have, we mostly play in the non-admitted space, so, we're largely dealing with wholesale brokers, so we had some very strong relationships with those wholesalers, so it was pretty easy to leverage some of those relationships and, get some, show some wireframes to some of those brokers, just at a high level. So just to make sure that we're mirroring, we don't have a lot of like standard ways that submissions come in. We're not using, Accord standards and things like that. So, this is very much, that experience that you mentioned, Denise, is very much tailored around like how does this information typically come in? What are the, kind of inflection points along when that information comes in? And how do you structure your system experience to mirror that? So, we did a lot of, so our requirement sessions were, basically included a lot of those, former brokers that are now, wearing that underwriting hat. And also, from time to time, we would certainly vet with some of our trusted wholesale partners as well. So.
And Jen, you had an interesting process.
Yeah, so for sure. So we took both an outside in and an inside out perspective. So what were our customers telling us that they needed and wanted? And what were our employees telling us that they needed in order to really serve the customer? So a slightly different angle on this. We knew a few things about ourselves, right? We knew we wanted to answer the call of what the customers were looking for, but we didn't want to be so prescriptive about how to do it because, let's face it, we're not a tech company. We weren't going to go out and build it ourselves. And we'd also never encountered or even attempted to do anything this large before. So even prior to COVID, we didn't have an in-sourced IT department and we didn't have a project management team at all at Boston Mutual. So this was all really brand new to us. So it was really important that we selected a vendor who we could feel would partner up with us and we would be able to really leverage their expertise and not necessarily try to make the new platform what we do today and how we do it, but more so let's leverage the technology that the platform brings and the process that goes along with it and adopt our ways, like simply just not saying anymore, this is how we've always done it. We're being open to exploring new ways of doing things with the end result of a better customer experience. We established some guardrails when we were out looking for a partnership, so we knew we were looking for a really long-term partner. We weren't looking for somebody to come in and implement the technology and then leave. Let's face it, we've been on our existing platform for 50 years. We've gotten our money's worth. I think somebody told me it was free. So, we've obviously gotten our money's worth, and we were really interested in implementing a system that limited the number of integrations that we needed to take, right? So again, we're not a tech company. We weren't interested in having to maintain all of these integrations. So we were looking for a platform that could get us as close to the end-to-end quote through claim process as we possibly could get. And we knew it needed to be cloud. We didn't, again, want to take on that expense of hosting hardware at our site. We wanted to benefit from kind of the crowdsourced nature of a cloud-based platform, meaning that as other customers bring ideas, they get baked into the core product, and we can benefit from them along the way. And we knew we needed to deliver specifically, again, on what our customers were asking for, right? So I run the call center. That's one of my teams. Customers call in probably every 3 or 4 out of 10 calls, and they're like, why can't I do this online? That's a great question, right? So we knew how important it was to be able to offer up portals and self-service and be able to grab some data analytics to be able to continue to iterate and work with those customers in the way they wanted to work with us.
So Brian, let's dig in just a little bit. We've got an enterprise relationship with Munich Re, where they're using the Majesco platform from an innovation standpoint.
Correct.
To start up different products, different businesses, et cetera. But you had very specific aspects also looking for a partner, kind of what Jen was getting into. What did you guys really, look for in a partner like with us? What was it that was differentiating?
Yeah, I mean, and Jen, I think you touched on it quite a bit, actually. I think that somebody who really understood that, obviously, when you're dealing with, central Munich Re entity, there's, the typical, cost, speed to market comes into play. But even beyond that, though, I think, really understanding what we were trying to do, which, really brought in a lot of flexibility, adaptability, those kind of things. And, realizing that, while obviously we are trying to build a lot more regimentation and standardization into this whole process, also understanding that, really what we are trying to do, we have different entities all across the Munich Re landscape that are offering small variations of the same product. We have a cyber product that, with slight tweaks that's, being offered all across the globe, right? So getting into, we kind of talk through some of those use cases and potential ways to, like, how can we bring this all under one umbrella where, we can, kind of have one framework that all of these different permutations of a similar product are offered, but at the same time, be able to, kind of have that level of variation that we work with our vendor partner and say, okay, like we need to be both scalable and repeatable, but also flexible and somewhat customizable as well. So that was really a big piece. And I know that I've been in other discussions with vendors where I've felt like they've tried to retrofit our business model into their platform, and that has never worked out real well. So, I think one of the reasons that we selected Majesco was that, there was that kind of balance between repeatability and adaptability.
One thing that we were talking at dinner last night, we went out for dinner as a group, was really about another aspect that has become even more important, I think, from the start of the process is investment in the technology and the level of R&D that's going on. And with our recent embedding of generative AI and our AI machine learning analytics into the core, helping to keep pace of the technology change and the change that's happening in the marketplace. It's not like, oh, let's look for this and that's going to last us 50 years again, because everything's changing so rapidly. So, keeping up with that, I think that's Jen, you were talking about that you were just having a conversation with your management and said, no, did you realize that we now have Gen AI embedded in?
I mean, 132-year-old life insurance carrier, risk is not something, we're not on the bleeding edge of risk. So, the open AI and generative AI is a little bit taboo. And so, we were talking about this and there was a little bit of a, hey, we got to kind of dial this back. And I said, hey guys, we can't put our head in the sand. Generative AI opens up so many possibilities for us to service our customers in a better way, to be able to offer a 24/7 service model. We can't just stick our heads in the sand. We need to kind of be looking up and thinking about how we can use this and we can feel good about using it. So it's an evolving conversation.
Yep. So one of the other things that, when you were looking at the implementation, I remember being a CIO and I remember doing implementations that we would customize the code. And we did a lot of customization to the point that you didn't even recognize the code any longer. I think that was a real historical kind of perspective. And I think taking a new core system, whoever it may come from, is taking what you can out of the box and not customizing it. What's really important is about your product. It's not about how your workflow necessarily is. And being able then to keep those upgrades. So kind of talk about your perspective on that, Brian, because you've had a number of different experiences in that arena.
Sure. So, our guiding principle through this whole thing was obviously to try and stay as close to out of the box as we could. And that was, and our ability to do that varied certainly across the different modules of the suite. So, within policy, we were able to keep the, kind of product agnostic pieces like, your life cycle, your submission intake, your broker onboarding, those sort of things. Like those we kept pretty much totally out of the box. However, once you got into anything, product specific, like basically through that quote journey, your data capture, your rating paradigm, your forms, all of that stuff was pretty much custom for each product. And that actually is helpful for us because, it kind of gives us, again, since we're not admitted, our products change quite a bit and we don't have to wait for any filing. We can make small tweaks to them, and having them be totally custom actually, well, yes, you definitely need to have some, a little more institutional knowledge, and you want to retain that institutional knowledge. It's a little harder for someone to come in and pick up a totally custom product and understand it. But since we do have that in a sort of a center of excellence model that we've adopted with Majesco, it actually gives us the ability to make some, to internalize and make some small tweaks to our products or add some ancillary coverage parts and blah, 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 like all that within that custom code. It actually ends up being a little bit more beneficial for us. Now in the billing module, we pretty much went totally out of the box, adopting an agency bill model that, that was kind of ad hoc before, and it has been very well received. Claims, I think we're a little bit in between. Like I think, we kept the main journey and just, had some very, line of business specific data capture that we tried to compartmentalize to an extra screen or two. But really the idea was, keep the framework out of the box, keep the product specific stuff custom.
And really it's helped you from a speed to market perspective that you talked about before.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Jen, your perspective on this, because you had 130 years of history here.
That's very true. So very, very similar to Brian, but we set forth a goal at the outset of the project. Could we actually be 95% or better out of the box? And like Brian said, it's the process, not necessarily our products, right? There's some certain customizations that need to go into the products. We really wanted to limit the customizations because we've all been on those big transformation projects where you buy a system and then you customize the heck out of it, and very rarely does that work, right? So we knew in order to increase our chances of being successful with this, again, we're a medium-sized insurer. I don't have a limitless budget, so I needed to do what I could with the money that we had. And so the first option was really take advantage of what's in the box and challenge the why. Make people really think about when they come up and they say, no, absolutely, I 100% need that invoice to be polka dot. Well, why? Play the 5 whys with people to really get to the root of what we're trying to solve and see if there isn't a path forward that we can use with the standard application. Actually, one of the implementers at Majesco said something really funny, so I'll share it here. We don't want to just take our old existing process and put a nice new wrapper around it. That would be like drinking old wine out of a fancy new bottle. And I couldn't agree with that more. It makes me laugh every time we talk about it. So really leaning into the out-of-the-box implementation, it enables the speed to market, like Denise was talking about. So not just on the initial implementation, but also on future product builds. Right? If we stay close to out of the box, it becomes much faster for us to deploy new products into the market. It also takes the speed to market on new employees way down, right? So we're training up employees, and the path is simple and straightforward, and it doesn't matter if you're processing something for group or you're processing something in the work site. It's going to work the same way. And overall, it just lowers the total cost of ownership, right? Because we're not paying to maintain all those customizations and having to do retrofits and testing and all of those things that go along with customizations.
So one of the things too, I think to kind of build on that from an employee perspective, now obviously from an agent or broker perspective, is just that experience. What are you seeing, Brian, maybe start with you, from an experience standpoint of the reaction of your agents and brokers in working with you, but more importantly, of your internal employees at what they're able to do, with a more modern system and the experience, kind of the user experience, the CX experience, or the employee experience?
Yeah, so that's, and Jen, you brought up a very good point. Like that's something, as far as bringing in, and I'll start with internal, as far as the ability to bring in new talent, I think that has been huge. Just because, now, you don't necessarily bring in someone that is, historically when we've hired, underwriters, we generally hire specialists or people that have experience in a certain line of business. Now we don't necessarily need to do that because effectively, you can bring in someone young and tech savvy and they can learn a product through that implementation, from the way that it's, since we've sequenced it and, put it in, what we feel is a very intuitive fashion within the Majesco platform. You don't have to learn these things by, trying to figure out where all these accelerators are and trying to piece together forms. And so it really I think it really makes, in general, much more attractive for, somebody young to come in and pair with like a legacy underwriter, and you've got kind of a good combo where, they're no longer learning through osmosis, they're learning intuitively through the system. As far as the external experience, I think, again, I mentioned that bringing out a standardized agency bill model was hugely well received, and it's funny, we went through the same where's my Polkadot invoice from? I think there was a little bit of, apprehension from our field at first because they thought the clients wanted everything, totally to work a certain client specific way. But actually, I think starting to see standardized quote documents, starting to see standardized statements, starting to see, similar turnarounds and et cetera, that was something that was very well received. And, it was something that, I think our growth speaks to that. Like it has been very well embraced both internally and externally.
Yeah, before I turn to you, Jen, I'm thinking back to a panel I was on just a few months ago at another event, and one of the insurers said, you know what, we've got to get into a whole different type of technology, because they hired a few Gen Zs and a few millennials, and they lasted 2 weeks because they said, I'm not working with this technology. I'm used to their gaming technology, their social media, all the things. And they said, this is archaic, I'm leaving. And so they've had a real difficult time really attracting people to go to the green screens.
Yes, for sure. It's been an absolute challenge there. So from a customer perspective, we haven't gone live yet. Our implementation will be next summer. But we're hearing loud and clear from our customers that we are just too hard to do business with today. Right? Not only is our legacy tech and process archaic, and we know it internally, our customers know it too, right? It takes too long to process their requests. Things are fractured, and if it's not updated in all of the systems in sync, we're exposing ourselves to our customers, and that's just not the experience we want for them to have. Insurance should really be, especially life insurance, it should be set it and forget it, right? So I quote the policy, I issue the policy, I bill the policy, and it should really be, from an employer and a broker perspective, it should just be on autopilot, right? They want to pay the bill once a month, but it shouldn't be something that they constantly have to worry that it's right, or it's in sync, or it's capturing newer termed employees, or whatever their issue is. And from our internal perspective, we also want it to be set it and forget it, right? So we want the technology to handle the process so we can deploy our employees to the customer and provide that real value-added experience for our customers when they call in to do the more value-added type activities, right? There's not a lot of value in me having employees process customer beneficiary changes or address changes. The value of deploying my employees to the customer is really to help advise and advocate and help them understand what their coverage is, why it's important. From an employee perspective, and Brian, you touched on it a little bit too, we established teams at Boston Mutual all around how they did the work and what systems they worked on. So everyone's role today is incredibly siloed. They know specifically the system and the process that they use for the products that they service. this is a tremendous growth opportunity for our employees as we embark on the transformation, right? Because we're going to move from specialists to generalists, and people will have a much greater understanding of the full end-to-end process, and they'll also have an opportunity to learn more about our full suite of products. So we're really looking at this from a perspective of an incredible opportunity for our employees to get more engaged, to learn more, as well as for us internally from a leadership perspective, really reduce our risk on key people.
So one of the things, having them both operating model in place and then the technology foundation in place, it really opens up the opportunity to do new and innovative things, bring new products to market or to reach new market segments. Brian, I think that's an area you guys are now already actively engaged in.
Correct. Yep. So, one of the things that we are now looking to do, I mentioned we have, traditionally are only non-admitted. We're actually looking to build an admitted offering for our commercial inland marine to complement that non-admitted and theoretically touch the more standard retail broker market. So, that will be a huge journey for us. And I think that will also entail some additional operating model changes and tightening up since we don't have much experience working in the admitted space. But that's one thing. And then we're also looking to, our fundamental, thought process was like, let's, build the core and stabilize that. And then let's look to externalize pieces of that core. To your point, Jen, like self-service portals, whether that be some, self-service quoting and binding for brokers, whether that's, some light FNOL, things like that. We're in that stage now where we're starting to look in solutions to externalize that core and, using the, the way that we built across that broker experience and understanding that data capture and stuff is going to make that a lot easier to do. So, whether that's even just exposing a limited view of what's in Majesco now, or whether that's just building a light front end, we're still talking through that. But again, the foundation's there to do that and make that next step. And then, we'll continue to, again, modify our existing product base as well, and we can manage that in-house, as I mentioned earlier.
Jen?
Yeah. So really simply stated, we know who we are. We know who our customers are. We're a life insurance carrier. So for us, it's all about getting the initial implementation going with the products that we sell today. And dramatically increase the customer's experience from what they're experiencing today to something better in the future. We certainly know that this transformation in the product is going to enable us to more quickly deploy new products that kind of fit in our wheelhouse. But right now we're really just focused on get the transformation going, get our customers happy, get our employees happier, and move forth from there.
Great. Coming up to the, I'll do some Q&A. What are your recommendations to the audience on considering a transformation or greenfield initiative? What are the things that you would say are the one or two key things to consider? Jen, why don't we start with you?
All right. So there's no better time to start. There will never be a better time to start. The time to start is now. And you don't need to have all the answers to start. And then the second piece that I would offer up is transformations don't happen overnight. My team hears me talk about it. It's not a light switch. We're not all going to come in 2 months and everything's going to be hunky-dory. And then I guess maybe if I get a third.
Yep, you can.
Don't underestimate the people side of the implementation. So the implementation of the tool itself is difficult, but the actual people side of the implementation and getting your people ready for the tool, that is possibly the trickier piece of this, and don't undercut that effort.
One thing that I've done podcasts with both, actually with Chris, your COO, and Jen, we just did one with you. You said something that was really interesting because you started down this path multiple times, but you never got to I do.
That's right. So there's on the people readiness side of this and getting our people ready for the implementation, we have a real healthy level of skepticism in our organization. So prior to me joining, over the past 10 or 15 years, they've had multiple attempts at finding a policy admin system that will work and doing the implementation. So this is actually the first time I have a coworker who said, we're going to walk down the aisle and we're going to say I do this time. And so that on the people readiness aspect of this, we've got employees that are like, oh yeah, we've heard that before, but definitively this is 2024 is the year we're going to say I do, and we're really excited for it.
Brian? Recommendations from you?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with the 3 tenets you said, Jen. I would just to expound on the people side, and Denise, we talked a lot about the word culture last night, right? And, one of the things that I think was really important is that, when we started this journey and early on, even like right after vendor selection, our COO went and sort of built our team, like in the entire discipline of digital product management, like that didn't even exist within our organization. There was no concept of that. So like just bringing in and having us there early on so that when those initial discussions with underwriters and brokers happened, like we established ourselves as that sort of fulcrum between business and technology. That just didn't exist before. Everybody was like, well, IT was historically just a reactive concept. So it was really like, oh, okay, well now, and it took a while to establish that trust, but establishing it before you go live and during the requirements phase versus trying to establish it after you go live is very different. And I've seen it happen both ways. So, being like kind of credentialized and being in those discussions where everybody, you're quickly entrusted as like, oh, okay, even though you're not an underwriter, we now get that you can represent our voice and you can take that to the vendor probably better than we can and just be that, that sort of linchpin there. And that really helped out.
Good. So a few questions that I've got here. First, Jen, there's one for you. What was your initial timeline expectations and how did they change? And how are you approaching backbook migration?
Okay, so good questions. So initially, like I said, we didn't have an IT department or a project management discipline at Boston Mutual at all. So I knew coming into this with my history of program and project management, I was going to need to chunk this out. And so what we did was we created some very near-term milestones that were pretty much in 3-month increments of what we would like to accomplish. So, initially we thought it would take us about a year to select a vendor. It took us about 1.5 years. And from there, our targets and our projections have been pretty spot on to about 1 year for our first implementation and then about 1 year for our second implementation. So we're managing really closely, and the way that we keep to the timeline is to aggressively manage the scope. Everybody knows if they're asking for something new, they have to come to me, and they know I'm going to ask them why 16 times. So everybody kind of has that front of mind, like how can we do this different? How can we adopt the out-of-the-box approach? In terms of the migration, so we're going to go live with a new business approach. So we're setting up right now the products we sell today. So we will go live with new business, and we will carefully monitor that, kick the tires on it. We're probably going to go live with some friendly brokers to make sure that they're happy. We can get their feedback. In terms of the actual conversion, that is probably the most difficult piece of this. We have 1 million policyholders and certificate holders that are active today. So we're doing a lot of analysis around what products those are, what would we want to do with policies that were sold on legacy products that we might not be selling. So we're just kicking off that effort, but we know that we're going to start that conversion effort after we go live with the full suite. So we've got a little bit of time to look into that, and really all options are on the table, right? So we're not going to try and fit square pegs into round holes. We're going to look at this holistically and make some business decisions about that back book of business.
So I have a couple of questions on Gen AI, and I'll kick it off. One is, how are you using Gen AI? What's an example of hyper-personalization? What data do you input, and how is Gen AI used to deliver a hyper-personalized message, and how do you measure the impact? So just as an FYI, we actually released a press release yesterday, Majesco did, on our partnership with Microsoft Copilot, which is what we're using at Gen A in both the core suite for P&C and LNA&H, and also our loss control solution, but we'll be embedding it in all of our solutions. And really, we have very specific use cases, and we're using the data within the system, either the rates, rules, and forms that our customers have that they know is quality data, or within our system, we have all of our documentation within the system. How do you do this? How do you do that? That we can pull that into generative AI to be able to help the service reps be able to say, okay, what other coverages are available for this product? Or how could I do this? Or what options do I have for that? Or could you help me create a letter to the customer? There's a lot of capabilities there to be able to do it, that you know where the data is. It's the data that you have within your system or that we have put there from a documentation standpoint, that it's about the quality. But I'll let either you have any last comments on Gen AI.
If you're using it.
We're not using it yet.
Yeah, I mean, for us, like, we're very much in the initial stages of talking about how that could work. I think really we're leaning towards leveraging that for cross-sell potential across all of those different business units that I talked about, because right now that is extremely siloed and doesn't exist. So something to kind of anchor that process a little bit and suggest like, hey, you know, this customer may need something that HSB or American Modern or one of our other entities, like that would be, I think that's really the path that we're trending for that, but we're still, you know, we're still figuring that out, but we're very excited about it.
And we have more use cases coming, so you guys
Right.
are helping to define those. So Jen?
So I think what got me most excited when we were talking about this over dinner last night was, you know, as I'm setting up a policy, I'm inquiring the system and saying what riders are available for this, or having that real-time support for a customer service rep as they're talking to a customer, to be able to kind of type in and say, you know, what are the customer can't afford this policy anymore? What are the options that we can provide to them? It really is going to institutionalize the knowledge within the tool, so we are not so reliant on kind of the tribal knowledge that carries forth in your employees. So that's very exciting.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Jen and Brian, for being a part of this. And as Jen said, there's no better time than to start now, because everything's changing at a rapid pace. Thank you.